Hi guys, in this video I want to tell you about a theory known as Black Swan. Okay, so I'm sure all of you know who Jeff Bezos is, and a couple of years ago he essentially strongly recommended this book to anyone who wants to have entrepreneurial success. Okay, so the author of this concept, this philosophy of Black Swan, is a gentleman named Nassim Nicholas Taleb, and he was born in Lebanon, a country in the Middle East next to Syria and Israel. And he was a really intelligent young man. He thought a lot, read a lot, philosophy. He was very interested in, and he kind of asked this interesting question about historical unpredictability. Okay, so um, I'm sure all of you know this kind of metaphor that you always assume something to be the case if that's how it has been up till now, but that does not guarantee that things will be different in the future. And that's what the kind of black swan is. Like, I mean, you have seen white swans your whole life, but the question is, what if you happen to see a black swan at some point in future? Like, how will it impact you? How will it affect your worldview, your perception of the world, your kind of life's philosophy? Okay, so that's what um, his book is all about. Okay, and essentially a black swan is an event which is hard, not hard but impossible to foresee. Okay, if it's something, you cannot guess a black swan, you cannot kind of predict a black swan in advance. Okay, it's always unpredictable, it's always like totally out of the blue. Okay, so it's an event which no one predicted and which has tremendous impact on just how people think about the world and which changes things forever. So that's what a black swan is. So you kind of might wonder, why did I say that black swans cannot be predicted? Well, why not? Well, you see, Nicholas Taleb has this pretty a little bit complicated theory about how what these black swans are metaphysically. Okay, so he believes in Plato's forms. Okay, so for Plato, there was this ideal, perfect world of forms. And things in this world are just imperfect copies of these forms. So for instance, you know, you'll never draw a perfect circle on a blackboard. Okay, like, I mean, you might get an approximation which will be 99.99% close, but it will never be a perfect circle. So there are these forms and there are copies in this world. So for Nicholas Taleb, um, when something curious happens, when a form comes into this world and becomes an object, okay, there is kind of there is this kind of warping happening. You know how Einstein says that kind of for, let's say, light objects, everything's fine, but when you get a super massive object which takes up small space, crazy things happen. Like light warps and space warps, and you get a black hole. So a similar type of picture for what happens when forms interact with matter in this world. When they come into the world, you know that's you get randomness. There is always kind of room for randomness, and that's what black swans are. It's when a form from the metaphysical kind of platonic world comes into this world and becomes an actual object, and crazy things happen. Okay, so a little bit challenging to wrap your head around if you haven't read a lot of philosophy, but that's what it is. Kind of metaphysical unpredictability. When things come into existence in this world. Okay, that's what it's about, and that's Black Swan. a historical event. So, what are some examples of black swans? Okay, so for instance, Christianity. Okay, who could have foreseen it? Okay, like that there would be this religion which will totally change the world, which will change human history, like for centuries and millennia. Everything will. I mean, nothing was the same after Christianity came onto the scene, and even less predictably, uh, there was this guy, this merchant in Saudi Arabia, by the name of Muhammad, and he got these visions, and the religion which he gave birth to. I mean, it changed things just as much as Christianity did, even more so, perhaps. So these are black swans. 9/11 was a black swan. So these are black swans from kind of a historical point of view, and in your life there are also black swans. Okay, just sometimes something totally unexpected happens. And by the way, you know, in most cases, losing a job is not a black swan. Okay, like I mean, if you got fired, you probably, in some sense, knew it was coming. So that's not a black swan. Okay, but sometimes meeting someone who really, makes an impact on you. You know, like a black swan is anything you could not have, predicted. And in the recent, history, kind of in the past, century or so, an interesting trend, began to happen, and that is the number of black swans tended to go up. We get more black swans in recent times. Why is that? Not quite sure. So, black swan is your key to life success as well. So, and Nicholas Taleb says, bet on uncertainty. Okay, so if you want to buy a stock on the stock market, okay, and you can choose between something you already know and this startup which no one has heard of. Bet on the startup. Okay, if you do that, your losses will be minimal, but gains, if there will be gains, will be tremendous and way beyond your expectations. So that's the kind of self-help, I guess, advice. Is bet on uncertainty. The more black swans you chase in your life, the more success you will have. Really interesting thought.